You are extensions of source energy, and you allow in varying degrees that which you really are to flow through you. And that is really what the art of allowing is all about. The better you feel, the more you are allowing who you really are to flow. The worse you feel, the more in this moment you've achieved somehow, legitimately, we always agree, you are justified in every moment that you pinch off your source. In other words, we never see you do it without reason. You always have very good reason to cut yourself off from life force. You do. From our perspective, never very good reasons. From your perspective, valid reasons. But as you begin to pay attention to the idea of the art of allowing, you begin to discover that nothing is more important than the way that you feel, because the way you feel is your personal guidance. It's your personal indicator of what you are doing right now, which is where all of your power is. Your power to allow or disallow. Your power to be who you really are, or your power to diminish it in some way by giving attention to something that does not agree with who you really are. So what kinds of things would not agree with who you really are? Well, we'll give you a list. If you were to say or think, ponder the idea from your physical perspective, I am not worthy, that would be a thought that would pinch you off, because that thought does not agree. If you were to think a thought, I don't like that person, that thought would pinch you off. Not because you are supposed to like that person, but that if you felt worthy, you would. In other words, when you are in alignment with who you are, it's easy for you to love because you're in alignment with that which is love. So if you find yourself angry, feeling hateful, seeking revenge, if you find yourself in that strong negative emotion, what that always means is that you have found something that you are pondering that is vibrationally so different from who you really are. And that's why it's fun for us. We like to sort of shake things up a little bit by talking to you about how much you love you, because usually you loving you is one of the last things that you try to do on purpose. It's the first thing you do naturally, but it's one of the last things that you try to do on purpose, because almost everybody around you is naturally loving themselves so much more. They find it odd when you love you. They would rather you love them. Sometimes people will say, Abraham, you teach selfishness. And their tone of voice is very accusing, like it's a bad thing for us to do. But we proudly proclaim, yes, we do. We do teach selfishness because we understand that this is a universe that is based on attraction, that it is based on inclusion. We know that every consciousness is attracting unto itself. And so you cannot help but draw to you that which you are. So if you are selfish enough to want to feel good, what are you drawing to yourself? But if you get very valiant and virtuous and you put yourself last and you let everything and everyone else be first, you cater to all of their desires until you are suffocated or without your own connection to source, then you can give it all to them, but it won't be much because you'll have nothing to give. Because unless you are selfish enough to care about the way you feel, then you will not be doing a very good job of adjusting your vibration and holding yourself in alignment with the source energy that flows to you naturally. When you do align with the source energy that flows to you naturally, you feel valued. You feel worthy. You feel light. You feel free. You feel sure-footed. You feel clear-minded. You feel such reserve of well-being that you can pour out your attention and your affection endlessly, and you never run out. You picture a bucket with well-being flowing in the top and well-being running out the bottom, if it runs out the bottom faster than it flows in the top, you don't feel so good. But when you open your valve and you realize that it flows endlessly, and you always have a huge reserve because you are tapped into the source of that which is the reserve of well-being, then you don't worry about attention that you're giving to others or love that you're giving to others or anything that you're giving to others, because it is always replenished, proportionate to what you are flowing. In fact, that's how it gets into your bucket to begin with. You flow it through your perspective. So how do you get out of whack? Could you flow too much to someone else? Never, because when you flow it, it always flows in. It's a valve, it's a fire hose, it's a stream. It's an ocean of well-being flowing to you. You could never use up your reserve. So what happens when it feels like you've used up your reserve? What happens? Well, you just temporarily pinched off the flow in. That's all. And it's easy to tell you've done it because you don't feel good. So the way you feel is of immense importance, because the way you feel is your indication of what you're doing vibrationally. Vibrationally. Interesting word, isn't it? Vibrationally. Here you are. You never have thought of yourself as a radio transmitter receiver, and yet you are. We see you in these magnificent bodies, but we see you as energy. We see you as vibration. We see you as consciousness. We see your body. We see your body as the housing of this consciousness, as the focusing mechanism. And even your brain, which is flesh and blood, we see that too, but we see it as the mechanism by which you are transmitting and receiving. So you are vibrational beings, most importantly. And so we think getting in conscious awareness of your vibrational tuner is of immense importance. We think it is the most important thing that any of you would do. So you say, well, Abraham, it is uncomfortable for me to think in terms of vibration. I can move things around. I can speak words. I can make things happen through my action. But I'm not very comfortable thinking of myself in terms of being a vibrational being. And we say, then think in terms of being an emotional being, because it is one and the same thing. An emotional being is one who is aware of emotions. And an emotional being is one who therefore is aware, whether you're doing it on purpose or not, or directing it on or not. When you are aware of your emotions, you are aware at least of vibrational variance. So when you're aware of vibrational variance, at least you know when you're changing the tuner on your dial. You would never set your radio dial for 98.6 and expect to hear what is being broadcast on 101 FM. You understand radio frequencies enough to know that they've got to match up. So we want you in the same way to say, when I have been focusing upon things that make me feel this ornery, or make me feel this vulnerable, or make me feel this angry, or make me feel this bound or not free, I cannot at the same time be a vibrational match to the well-being that I've been telling the universe that I want. So what happens is, if things are not going for you the way you would like them to, it only means that you're not vibrationally in alignment with your own desire. Your desire is vibrating on one frequency, but your habit of thought is vibrating on another. Now you could say desire is on one frequency and belief is on another. That's one way of saying it. Or you could say what I want is on one frequency, but what I notice that I have is on another frequency. You could say, what I want is on one frequency, but I don't think about that very often. What I think about often, which has become my dominant thought, is different from my desire. When I think about my desire, it feels one way. When I notice where I am, it feels another. Getting the sense of this? So when you say, I am an emotional being, and I'm going to begin to take emotional journeys, then what you're saying is, I'm going to start guiding my thought and word and even my action based upon where the idea of it feels, rather than upon any other factors that I've ever considered. In other words, I'm going to start guiding myself emotionally. Now, this is worrisome to some, especially if you've worked not to be emotional, or especially if you have worked particularly hard not to be emotional, meaning you've got control of your emotions, and you're living with people or working with people who are very emotional. Because sometimes when you are interacting with people who seem to be emotional, what you notice is that they are highly emotional, often in a sort of disconnected way. They are out of control. Their emotions are too close to the surface, you say. And we want to say to you, your emotions are never too close to the surface. The closer to the surface they are, the better. But when you have a handle on your emotions and you are paying attention to them in the early subtle stages, then nothing gets very far out of hand that you don't want to. In other words, we would like you to be an emotional person who feels ecstasy and elation and appreciation and love and joy often. And we would like you to use some of the processes, we'll talk about some of them here today, that would ramp you up to even higher degrees of emotion. Positive emotion. In fact, most of the processes that we've offered to you over time have been offered with the intent of helping you go from some of the higher registries in emotion, like feeling pretty good, to wanting something, believing something, hoping for something, maybe a little pessimism, sometimes a little frustration or overwhelmment, but mostly feeling pretty good. So most of the processes that we've offered you have been intended to help you go from that feeling pretty good a lot of the time to feeling really good all of the time. Now, if you are feeling strong negative emotion much of the time, then most of the processes that we've been offering to you are not a good fit for you, because you do not actually have vibrational access to thoughts that feel really good from a place that you've been practicing not feeling really good. In other words, if you are feeling strong negative emotion, and you're doing it on a pretty consistent basis, then even though your well-meaning Abraham friends who announce to you on a pretty regular basis that you are the creator of your own reality, and that you should reach for the thought that feels better, you should follow your bliss, the reason that you cannot turn around on a dime and do that is because law of attraction says that that which is likened to itself is drawn. So whatever thoughts you've been practicing and whatever vibration has become the dominant vibration within you on a myriad of subjects, that's where you're going to tune in first. So if you say, and once you tune in there, of course, things manifest. And that doesn't help much, does it? In other words, it helps when the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets, but it doesn't help so well when the worse it gets, the worse it gets, the worse it gets. Because whatever you're focusing upon, you're offering a vibration about. Whatever you're offering a vibration about, you're attracting more of. Whatever you're attracting more of, you are usually giving more attention to. So the spiral sort of takes you in the direction of the strongest current. So here today, we want to talk about taking emotional journeys so that you can begin to control the direction of the current. And by an emotional journey, we mean caring more about how you feel than the outcome of whatever it is you're focused upon. In other words, someone might say, I'm in deep, deep debt, and I feel awful about it. I'm frightened. People are calling me and hounding me for money I don't have. People I love are requiring and needing from me things that I can't give them. And so most people would think that their journey is a very practical, often action-oriented journey from finding some way of getting more money to fill the void of not having enough money. An action journey of looking in the paper, finding a job, talking to people, buying the winning lottery ticket, doing something that lines them up with more money. But by an emotional journey, what we want to say to you, your work is far less complicated than you think. Your work is to find thoughts that help you release the fear of not having enough money and replace that feeling of fear with a feeling of hopeful expectation or even belief that it's going to turn around.